This presentation is titled Gamification, Increasing Motivation for Special Education Learners. When addressing the problem of motivation, I wanted to put the emphasis on special education students, as these are the population of students that I teach with throughout the school day as a special education teacher. I would consider this to be a problem that probably isn't very well known. While it may be known that special education students often struggle with motivation, there's not necessarily an emphasis on motivation as it pertains to individual IEP goals. A lot of times we focus more on how they're doing with the regular education curriculum and don't necessarily put a whole lot of emphasis on how they're doing with their individualized education plan. Special education students are assessed on specific areas of need throughout the school year. These areas of need typically consist of reading comprehension, reading fluency, math calculation, or math reasoning. Special education students are monitored on these goals throughout the school year and are given an IEP progress report quarterly in addition to their regular report card. Because of this, special education students often view this IEP progress monitoring as extra work, which sometimes causes them to lack the motivation needed to excel on their goals. It's worth noting that not all special education students have all of these goal areas. Some students, for example, may only have reading goals, whereas other students may only have math goals. What we tend to see, however, is that most kids labeled as having a learning disability have goals in the areas of reading and mathematics. So how can gamification help increase this motivation? As soon as I looked into motivation and saw this reference to the idea of badges, I immediately thought of Boy Scout troops. Much like a Boy Scout troop learning various skills, I'll be rewarding my special education students with badges for reaching certain goals in their IEP, or reaching specific baselines in their reading and mathematics. This idea of collecting badges should motivate some students to work towards their IEP goals and put in the effort to show growth. They will want to try harder so that they can earn the badges. So how could students earn badges? There are two ways that I'll have students earn badges. One is reaching their marking period goals that are outlined in their specific IEPs, and then the second would be reaching baseline goals that they themselves choose that deal with specific skills in ELA and math. What exactly is the difference between these two? Well, as I said previously, students have specific goals that are outlined in their individualized education plans. So, for example, student A may only have goals that reference reading comprehension and math calculation. So their reading comprehension goal may simply state that student A will correctly respond to grade level reading comprehension questions with 70% accuracy. And then their math calculation goal may say student A will correctly multiply 2-digit by 2-digit numbers with 60% accuracy. With my badge rewarding system, students would be given, or I should say this specific student, would only be given badges for reaching these two specific goals. However, being other students may have more goals and therefore may be able to earn more badges, I also give this second option of baseline goal badges. The baseline goal badges would be universal for all students participating. So while the IEP goals are individualized, the baseline goals can be attempted by all students. This means that even a student that doesn't have a particular area of need in their IEP, they can still receive a badge in that area if they reach the baseline goal. So the baseline goals, for example, could be correctly reading 70 words per minute. Typically this would fall in the area of reading fluency. So even if a student doesn't have reading fluency in their IEP, they could still try to get a baseline goal badge for correctly reading 70 words per minute. The trick with baseline goals is that baseline goals may only be attempted after the IEP goal has been attempted, and they can only try to get one baseline goal achieved per week. This will keep from a particular student who may be very strong in reading from being able to just go collect all of the reading badges really quick, or a student who's already very skilled in math and doesn't need to focus on math in their IEP from going and quickly collecting all of the math badges. By making it so that they must attempt their IEP goals first, that could motivate them even further to focus on their IEP goals and then come back and try to knock out the baseline goals one at a time. Also, by making it that they can only do one per week, it makes it so that they continue to strive each week for something different. Again, you wouldn't want a student to collect all of their badges in the first week and then have nothing to strive for. The badges are pretty simple, and they're outlined based on each specific skill. I made sure that each badge was a different color, and I also made sure that there was a difference in appearance between baseline badges and IEP goal badges. So the baseline badges, as you see here, focus on correctly reading a certain amount of words. So the red baseline badge would be 70 words per minute, green would be 80 words per minute, and orange would be 90 words per minute. Blue would be 100 words per minute. Then you get into the single-step math word problems at 70%, 80%, and 90%. And then you get into the multi-step word problems, again at 70%, 80%, and 90%. Then when you come over to the actual IEP goal badges, you'll see that those are circular so that students can tell the difference. And this one right now just simply says achieve benchmark goal number 1. I left it kind of vague because each student's benchmark goal would be different. Some may focus on, for example, multiplication. Some could focus on division. Some could focus on subtraction. Some may focus on fractions. So by making it so that they just have to reach their goal for that particular marking period, it makes it a lot clearer and a lot easier for that student to focus on their individual goals. Now, the goal 1, 2, 3, and 4 doesn't necessarily match up with the marking period. For example, if a student's IEP is scheduled to be up in January, they may be focusing on goal number 4 in January, whereas another student whose IEP doesn't end until May only be working on goal number 2. So it's more focusing on the 1 through 4 of their outlined goals in their IEP, rather than focusing on the individual marking periods. So it's a little bit different than how they would be tracked in the regular education classroom. I would then have a chart set up in the classroom that would have all student ID numbers listed on the chart, as well as what badges they've earned up to that point. Now, the reason I would use student IDs is because I wouldn't want students to be embarrassed thinking that all of their peers are looking at what badges they've earned and what badges they haven't earned. Seeing as how all of the assessing of this is going to be done one-on-one, students shouldn't know which students have which badges. Students would obviously know their own ID number and would be able to come up to the chart, find their ID number, and look at what badges they've successfully gotten. I do think it'll be good, though, that they'll be able to kind of compare where they're at compared to their peers, as that may be another technique to motivate them even further. If they see that another peer has started to collect certain badges, that may motivate them to try to want to earn the same badges. All in all, the focus here is on motivating special education students. And with using this idea of collection and this visual idea of rewarding badges, I really think this will motivate special education students to want to achieve their IEP goals, something that we don't necessarily focus a whole lot on in school, but something that I think is definitely very important for special education students.